Great. Welcome, everybody. All right. All right. So I want to thank Brad and the club for inviting me up here to share with you my passion, my hobby, my business. This is year 48 of surf fishing for me. 17 years ago, I went to some of my mentors, like Lyndon, and some other great guys, and said, I have an idea. I think I want to try to guide surf fishing. And they looked at me like Scooby-Doo. They went, what are you talking about? There's nobody doing that. So here we are 17 years later, and it's just grown and grown and grown. I'm so happy to be here by the grace of God and modern pharmaceuticals, considering last Saturday at 103 fever. That flu is no joke, but between hot tea and steroids and antibiotics and Mucinex, I'm here. I don't know how long this is going to hold up, but I was not going to fail you. In 17 years, I've only had to cancel 3 times, and one was last weekend. I had to cancel my charter, so I'm just happy to be here. I'm going to try to give you all this knowledge. We're going to condense it down into 2 hours. I've got stuff for advanced. I got stuff for beginners. For beginners, who has never surf fished before? Raise your hands. Good, 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 good. All right. I kind of start things in reverse. I'm up here to just do a seminar. I'm here to give you as much information as I can. And what I like to do is start in reverse. I like for you to ask me questions. So we're going to take a few questions, and we'll write them down, and I will make sure I'm going to cover those in the next couple hours. So, and there are no silly questions when it comes to surf fishing. I had to figure this in 1976. I had to figure this out myself. So, questions from the audience, yes?
How do you know where on the beach you fish?
Great. That's why Brad got me this chalkboard. Awesome. Where? It's called Reading the Beach.
Wind.
Next.
Wind.
Wind. Wind is definitely a factor. Yes, sir.
2 questions. Are you going to show us how you wrap your rigs in your container so that when you pull them out, they just come out real easy?
Yes.
And number 2,
rig bag.
would you address a J-hook versus a circle hook?
Yes. Okay. Great question, because back in the day, that's all we had was J-hooks. And we had a weird thing called a kale hook. Yes, sir.
What do you use for bait?
We're going to cover probably 6 different baits. Great question. Yes, sir.
How do you balance out line strength versus casting distance?
Makes a big difference. Line strength versus casting distance. A couple more. Yes, sir.
Best tides. The tides?
Tides?
Yeah, what's the best tide?
Yep. One more.
How far out do I have to cast? Because they all go the same distance.
Hot tea is going to make it. We're going to do this. All right, let's start with bait. If you could only take one bait to the beach the rest of your life, what would it be? Yell it out. Yes. Shrimp. Everything in this ocean will eat a shrimp. One day at Volano, I caught 11 different species. All I had was a 2-aught circle hook and fresh shrimp. Now, there's a difference in your shrimp: frozen, fresh dead, and live. Why not use the best bait you can get? Why not use the freshest bait? If you go down here to the convenience store and get a pack of shrimp, is it 2 months old or is it 2 years old? Most likely closer to 2 years old if you buy it at the convenience store. But I go to the local bait stores, I buy live shrimp. Now, rarely do I use them live, I use them fresh killed. Instead of fresh dead shrimp, they're fresh killed shrimp. I'll get 3 dozen shrimp. I've got 36 baits, because I'm matching the hatch. I'm matching what they're eating. I'm matching the size of a sand flea. I'm matching the size of a baby calico crab. I'm matching the size of a ghost shrimp. And I'm matching the size of the clams. So a small piece of bait is all you need. If you've ever heard the term elephants eat peanuts, catch how many huge redfish I've caught on a 2/0 circle hook with a little piece of shrimp. Now, if I'm targeting big redfish, yeah, I'm using a whiting head or a half a crab or something big, but elephants eat peanuts, remember that. Small piece of bait. I'll take a live shrimp, I cut the horn off, I cut the tail off, I make 2 baits out of the tail, and I make 1 bait out of the head. 36 baits with 3 dozen shrimp. Keeping them fresh is important. If you set up your surf cart, you always want to work out of the same side of your cart. You can do everything just about with your eyes closed. If anybody wants to get a nice Christmas present for somebody, a custom cutting board and a bird protector. How many times you turn around, those boat-tail grackles are eating your bait? Keeps the sun off your bait, keeps the birds out of your bait. That's made here locally in Jacksonville. Now, when I get those live shrimp that I've gone to the expense of, a plastic container, a waterproof plastic container. There's chlorine in the ice, and that'll degrade your shrimp very quickly. Like, why is it mushy? Put it in a plastic container, bury it in the ice. That bait's good for 4 days if you keep it in the ice. Now, if I'm doing back-to-back charters, I got bait the next morning because I bury it in the ice. I only take out as much as I'm going to need in the next 15 minutes. Take out a few, put them on my bait tray, bury the rest in ice. Now, the beautiful thing, if I'm not going to fish for a few days, I take this home and pop it in the freezer. That's as fresh frozen shrimp as you can get. They were alive just a few days ago. Take them right back out of the freezer, throw them in the cooler. By the time you get to the beach, you're ready to fish. So, fresh killed shrimp. A lot of times fresh dead shrimp are the dead ones they scoop off the tank, and they're already started to rot. True fresh dead shrimp still have the antennas attached, because if they've ever been quick frozen, the antennas are gone. So if somebody says those are fresh dead shrimp, they don't have any antennas, that's not true. They've been frozen at least once. But go to the expense, get a few dozen shrimp, use them sparingly, more importantly, bury them in the ice. That way you'll have fresh shrimp all day long and for next weekend, if you have any left.
Excuse me, did you say you peeled the shrimp?
No, I do not peel shrimp. The shell is what helps hold it on. And when I put it on that little 2/0 circle hook, I don't go top to bottom, bottom to top, I go side to side, so I have the most shell to hold it on there. I don't soak it in Diet Pepsi. If anybody's ever heard that, a good friend of mine, Spencer, he started that a while back. I think he may have even spoken to the club. But there are no Pepsi machines in the ocean. There's nobody out there peeling the shrimp for them. The shell holds it on the hook better. Any other questions about the shrimp? Yes, sir.
Do you salt them ever?
I have salted so many baits in the last 47 years, that's ridiculous. I don't do it anymore. I have other ways of holding the bait on the hook better. I used to salt everything. I actually got to the point where I was peeling shrimp and salting to make them a little tough thing. The problem is you suck out all the goodness. If you take some fresh clams, crack them open, put them in salt, if you forget about it a week later, they look like a brown potato chip. There's no goodness left. So instead of salting your baits to make them tougher, come up with better ways to keep them on the hook. And I'm going to share that with you about the 3 soft baits that I use. And you can imagine putting a soft, squishy clam on a hook and throwing it 150 yards out in the ocean and still not come off the hook. Then we got a better plan than salting. Now for the advanced class, let's talk about what I do now. I make a highly salinic solution, and I do that by bringing a gallon of salt water home from the beach, putting it on the stove, getting a rolling boil, and adding 3 pounds of sea salt. When you're cooking this, it becomes a point at about 2 pounds, 2.5 pounds, the salt will no longer dissolve. The water is so salty, it won't dissolve. Take it off the stove. It takes about 4 hours for that to cool down. I don't know why salt water holds heat more, but. So once that's cool, I have that same gallon jug. I pour that highly salinic water back into that jug, put it in the freezer at 0 degrees, and it will not freeze. Think about that for a minute. So when I come home with leftover bait, especially the bait sometimes it's hard to find, sand fleas, ghost shrimp, which we'll talk about, I put them in a small container. I take that 0 degree water out, I pour it on it, I cap it off, I put it in the freezer, and it will not freeze. 4 months later, that sand flea looks like the day you caught it from the ocean. The eggs are still orange because it's perfectly preserved in its environment, seawater and sea salt. So that's what I do now. I'm getting ready to go on a weeks-long vacation tournament trip in Pensacola. I cooked my salt water last week. I got my sand flea rake, I got my ghost shrimp pump, and I'm gonna collect bait during the week. I'm gonna throw it in that highly salinic salt water. On tournament morning, Saturday, when I pull it out, it's gonna look like I caught it on Monday. So that's the only thing that I salt any longer. Because I don't wanna suck the goodness out of the bait. All right, other baits, obviously sand fleas work really good. They won't catch all species, but the 4 species that I like to eat, it will: pompano, whiting, redfish, and black drum. Now you can care for your sand fleas better, make them last longer. You can keep sand fleas alive for 4 days without food, not without moisture, not getting them too cold, not getting them too hot. So for that, I came up with the sand flea condo, which is 2 exact same size containers. One is solid, does a couple of things. It catches their urine when they stress out. Number 2, it doesn't let them sit in the ice. If they get too cold, they'll die. The other one is completely full of holes. This allows for the urine to drain. It also allows you to re-moisturize them 4 days, as long as you take some salt water home with you. And you keep them cool, not cold in the refrigerator, not 95 degrees in the garage. Luckily, I have a loving wife of 43 years that lets me put them just inside the breakfast nook, where it's like 75 degrees all the time. And once you rinse them, they don't hardly have any smell anyway. But anyway, twice a day, once I get home, twice a day, I'll grab that jug of salt water, put it like that, pour a quart of water on it, let it drain, put it back together, put it in the breakfast nook. They're good for days as long as you keep them moist. You don't need a lot of sand, and you don't want that dark gray, fine sand. It kind of compresses around them. You want that fluffy red shell sand. They can move around a little bit. Any questions about keeping sand fleas alive? All right. Next bait, the crabs. I really like blue crabs, especially when the water's cold. Doesn't seem to produce for me in the warmer months, but now. I caught my first 6-pound pompano at Huguenot on 2 little crab knuckles. There's a lot of videos out there. I don't make videos, I'm old school, but there's videos out there of me doing stuff like this, but just, you can Google crab knuckles for bait. You take a blue crab and make at least 10 baits out of 1 medium-sized blue crab. What you're using is the knuckle. Cut the legs off, cut the body in half. If you're going after big fish, just use half the crab. But if you're trying to catch pompano or other fish, you just want to use the knuckle. And same thing, like a little 2/0 circle hook. You put the hook right where you cut the leg off and pop it back out through the shell. You kind of have to wiggle. You want it to bust through that shoulder joint. It won't come off the hook if you do that. But you don't want to round the point of your hook off either, so when you put it in there, you just wiggle back and forth, and it will chisel through the shell.
Sir, can I ask a dumb question? You mentioned that a lot, you use a 2/0 circle hook.
Yeah.
We use a number 2 circle hook a lot on the islands, and I would catch this giant redfish. So 2/0 seems kind of bigger to me, but you just.
Yeah, 2/0 is, yes, they only use a number 2. The stealthier, the better. So he goes all the way down to a number 2. A couple times a year I go down to a number 2. That's when I'm in a whiting tournament. Because even a 18-inch, 2-pound whiting has got a small mouth. I'm not trying to catch a 40-inch redfish. So it's just my preferred size. Because when that 40-inch red comes along, I got a much better chance of landing him with that 2/0 circle hook. I don't buy expensive hooks. I've tried them all, but I always go back to the inexpensive Eagle Claw L197 2/0. It's what's on 90% of the rigs that I carry. But good point. Smaller the hook, the stealthier. An old man taught me how to use a little number 2, little tiny mosquito hook with live mullet. I may have caught more redfish, I don't know, but we caught a lot of redfish that day because it was real stealthy and the mullet stayed live longer. Shell. You want to cut it across the foot. You can usually get 3 baits out of that clam. And when you take your hook, you're going to put it through the squishy, you want to put it through the tough part first, turn it around and put it through the squishy part. Now, if you cast gently, like one of my mentors, I know most of y'all know Larry Finch, he casts very soft, but when I need to get one way out there, I'll strap it on the hook with bait thread. Bait thread is just pure elastic, and I use this on the 3 soft baits. I use it on clams, I use it on ghost shrimp, and I use it on ghost crabs. My favorite, there's many brands out there, but my favorite one is called Miracle Thread. It's got the right elasticity, it's got the right thickness, it's not too thin, it's not too thick. So this is real easy to use. Versus in 1976, I was using dental floss and tying little knots on there. It take 3 or 4 minutes to put 1 clam on a hook because you're trying to tie these little knots. But on this, it's very easy to use. We've already put the clam on the hook. You're going to slide the clam up on the shank of the hook. You're going to pull out about 8 inches of this bait thread. Get a little tiny piece. You're going to go up to the eye of the hook. You're going to pinch it on the eye of the hook. You're going to pull it really tight and go 1, 2, 3, 4. That's your knot. Hold that a little too tight. 1, 2, 3, 4. Somebody have been in the toolbox too long. 2, 3, 4. Now you hold the clam or the ghost shrimp, or the ghost crab in place, and you gently make a cocoon around it. I like about 12 wraps. You can do 20 wraps. And once you've got that cocoon around it, then you pinch it and go, you're done. It literally takes 10 seconds to strap on a clam or another soft bait and throw it as hard as you want to, and it's not coming off the hook. It's virtually invisible. People call it ghost thread or cocoon thread. But the brand I really like is called Miracle Thread. It's inexpensive. It's like $8, and it'll last you probably 2 or 3 seasons. I think there's 200 feet on here.
So is that biodegradable?
Yes. Yeah, it's nothing but pure elastic. It won't hold up like monofilament. deteriorates very quickly. I think, matter of fact, this is deteriorating because of the heat. Because of the heat in my tackle box. Any questions about bait thread?
Where do you buy that?
The internet, I'm not sure if the local tackle stores up here have it. Strike Zone has it in Jacksonville. Don't get the orange unless you want a shark fish and you want to strap some guts around a whiting or something. It's too thick. It's harder to break. The white miracle thread. I just ordered some, and yeah, Amazon to your house in 2 or 3 days. All right, that's crabs, that's sand fleas, that's shrimp, ghost shrimp. Here's one of the advanced things. As a kid on Jack's Beach, I saw these little holes in the sand, and my dad was a farm boy from Wisconsin. My mom grew up on a farm in Tifton, Georgia, and I knew if there was poop coming out of that hole, there was a critter in there. As a kid, I would dig and I would dig and I would dig, and I never could find it. I didn't know what they even were until six years ago. There's a very strange creature that lives in the low tide zone on hard, flat beaches, and it's called a ghost shrimp. Listen to this importantly. It is the best surf fishing bait there is. They stink. They're weird creatures. It looks like an alien and a shrimp had a baby. They have lobster claws, little tiny lobster claws. They live in the sand their whole life. A rare occasion, I haven't figured out yet, they do come up sometimes. But you're only gonna find them on a hard, flat beach. You're only gonna find them at low tide, and you're gonna see a little hole. The little hole has got a mound of sand around it. There's only 2 creatures that does that. Little tiny mantis shrimp and ghost shrimp. How do you get them out? You gotta use a giant syringe called a shrimp pump. Our Australian brothers came up with this stuff. In Australia, they call them yabbies. There's several of these on the market. It's nothing but a giant syringe. It's got a rubber ball in the bottom. When you see the hole, you need some water for suction. Not, if you go, there's a bunch of them down at Huguenot. If you go there at a dead low tide and the sand's already dry, it won't do any good. You have to have water for suction. I like about 1 inch or 2, whether it's incoming or outgoing, and you simply see the hole, put it on there, push as hard as you can, and pull as hard as you can, and go. If things work right, you've got a ghost shrimp. They're about that long, about the size of a pencil. They're little skinny little things. The Australians also call them nippers. Their little lobster claws are sharp as a hypodermic needle, and they're curved at the end. When they get you, it doesn't come out. You go ouch and you pull it and the claw's still stuck in your hand. But it's a little tiny nip. They're not poisonous. I'm just letting you know. I found out the hard way. I'm walking around with a handful of them. I'm doing this, right? And all of a sudden, so, ghost shrimp. They're very soft. They're hard to keep on the hook, except with the bait thread. Very good bait. This tournament I'm going to, I'm going to concentrate on catching bait for a few days. I know the fish are there. The water temperature's right. Everything's right. So I'm going to have plenty of ghost shrimp. I'm going to have plenty of live sand fleas. Preparation. People say I'm a lucky fisherman. No. When preparation meets opportunity. That's it. I'm over prepared, as obviously you can see. Any questions about ghost shrimp or ghost pumps? Yes.
Do you put the ghost shrimp on pole?
Great question. I do not. I use half of one unless they're small. They're a really weird creature. Their back end kind of looks like a lobster or a mantis shrimp. The front end looks like a shrimp and a lobster combination. I just break them in half. And in the middle is their orange egg sac. There's hardly anything to them. They're so soft, but I'm telling you, they stink and they work really good. When I've come home after 6 or 7 hours on the beach, and I'll walk up and give her a kiss, ooh, you need to take a shower. That's a ghost shrimp kind of day. Of course, hopefully I'm covered with fish slime too. Yeah. Fish migrate their whole life. Some just go offshore, like in the wintertime, the big redfish, when they're done with their breeding, they'll go offshore miles and miles. Other fish migrate with a temperature zone. One of my favorite targets is pompano. And like I said, they don't argue over the thermostat, they just leave. It gets too cold, they go south. It gets too hot, they go north. They go all the way in the summertime to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. If you have a really cold winter, they go all the way south to where? Pompano Beach. I've chased them every year, and it's amazing. Sometimes, one year, they only made it to New Smyrna. I'm down in Vero, we're not catching anything, and you may remember this, 250 pompano. Three commercial fishermen were up in New Smyrna just wearing them out because that water never got cold enough to push them around Cape Canaveral. I want to send everybody the technology that I use to make me more successful. And I think the best way, Brad, does everybody have pretty much email contact?
Members do.
Members. So all the members, I'm going to send Brad an email. He's going to send it to you about the technology, the websites, the apps that I use to make me more successful. We'll swing back around to that. But first, let's talk about where to put the bait. I came up with this analogy that if we wanted to go to Miami Beach, somebody answer out, what highway could we take?
US 1.
95. There's another highway that goes all the way to Miami. US 1, and there's a third one that goes all the way to Miami.
A1A.
A1A. So fish do the same thing. They're not doing a whole lot of east and west. They're doing more north and south. And that's where we're going to talk about putting the baits. On A1A, and on US 1, and on 95 South. The first time it hit me, I was on Crescent Beach when you could keep 10 pompano, and I had probably 8 in the cooler already. I could not keep 2 rods baited. Letting everybody think about those kind of days. It was just crazy. I finally got a sand flea on a 3rd rod, and I looked over, and my first one was already bent over. And so I took that, it was a little light surf weight rod, and I'm looking at this one, bent it over, and I just went, I put it in the rod hole, and I ran over there. That cast wasn't from here to the door. That cast was in thigh deep water. I'm reeling in rod number 1, and I hear zzz. I look over, and that other rod is bent over, and the drag is ripping. 6-pound, 4-ounce pompano was in thigh deep water from here to the door. So where do you have to cast? You got to cover it. You got to cover short, long, and medium until you find them. But that first little drop off, that's A1A. As long as you have enough water when they feel comfortable, they're going to come feed right up against that little ledge. Only one more example. Surf fishing tournament, many, many years ago, redfish were on the list. I've got the best tackle. I've been coached by long distance coaches. I got everything perfect. I'm there before the sun comes up. This old man comes down. He's got a bucket. He's got a Zebco 33 and a 5-foot rod with a 1-ounce egg sinker and a brim hook. I'm thinking, I hope he catches him some dinner. I hope he gets some whiting. 10 minutes later, he didn't even look at the ocean. He sat on his bucket. He got him a piece of shrimp, cast it out. I'm not hearing that little drag. That he rolls up about a 20-inch redfish. I'm thinking, I'm winning this tournament. Oh yeah, I got all the stuff, I got all the knowledge, I got everything I need. I'm winning this tournament. This is when the limit was 1. 15 minutes later, his rod is bent over and the drag is not doing it. It's zinging. 10 minutes later, he slides up this 30-inch redfish, puts it in his bucket, and runs for the dunes. I'm thinking, I'm definitely winning this tournament. 110 surf anglers and nobody brought a redfish to the table. Why? Take a guess. We were all throwing too far. That was at Ponte Vedra Beach where it drops off really quick, and those redfish were right there at our feet. No one brought a redfish in. So that's A1A. The buffet table is the sandbar. That's US 1. Have you ever walked out into the ocean? It's a beautiful day. You walk out, I'm gonna walk out to the sandbar. It's only like knee deep. It's knee deep, and this thigh deep. You're looking at the sandbar right there, and there's only 18 inches of water on the sandbar, and all of a sudden you're to here, just before you pop up on the sandbar. Has anybody experienced that? You just walk through all the fish. That's US 1. When the waves hit the sandbar, it dislodges their food. Baby calico crabs, clams, sand fleas, and all that rolls right over into that trough, where it's a little bit deeper than the rest of the trough that you just walked through. This may be knee deep, thigh deep, waist deep. I remember as a young guy, I got my surf rod up here. I'm on my toes, just trying to get to the sandbar so I can catch those big fish out there. No, I just walked through all the fish. They're right here. So that's US 1. After the sandbar, when it goes into the oblivion, that's 95. If you want to catch a bigger shark, if you want to catch a tarpon, you have better success if you can get a big bait out there, but not necessarily because they all still come to here. But 95 is when they're ready to get out of town. On rare occasion, I've ever caught decent fish out there. The fish I want to catch are scared. They don't want to be out there. But our fish travel out there. Only 2 examples. Jacksonville Beach Pier, thousands of pompano, clouds of pompano flowing under the pier. They won't eat. They're not eating anything because they're concerned about water temperature, mainly. They're just leaving. I got that from Spencer several times. The other one is I'm in West Palm Beach. It's a very cold winter. I look and this guy comes out of his condo in full scuba gear, and I know there's a reef about 150 yards out there, and I'm thinking, maybe he's gonna shoot himself a button snapper or sheephead or something for dinner. He comes back about half an hour later, he's got 20 pompano on his stringer. Well, number one, you can't spearfish pompano, and number two, the time the limit was 10, but he's got 20 pompano. I'm on the beach with all this awesome gear, I haven't caught one. So he's coming out of the water and I'm walking towards him. He's walking as fast as he can because he's very illegal. And I said, I'm not the game warden. I'm not the game warden. You got to tell me, well, what's going on here? He said, there's just thousands of them and they're just going by. They're headed for warmer water. And he's just reeling them in, putting it on his stringer. You know, a little while later, he's got 20 of them on his stringer. So that's 95. You don't need to cast a long ways. It behooves you to have in your arsenal rods and reels that will cast a long ways and the ability to put that high quality tackle in motion, specifically when there's a wind in your face. Right now, I think today is supposed to get close to 15 miles an hour coming out of the southeast. If that sandbar is 80 yards out there, if US 1 is 80 yards out there, now on a normal day, that's about a 120-yard cast. So that's why it's good to have better quality tackle, better quality techniques to be able to reach the fish. And my best 2 buddies, I've got my limit already. They haven't caught a fish, and all they needed was 15 more yards. It was into a northeaster. It was down at Varn Park at Flagler, and it was all I could do to get it there. But I caught my 6, and then I cast it for my buddy. He caught his 6, and I cast another buddy, and he caught his 6, because they were all stacked up just inside that sandbar. But the wind was so strong, it took a long cast to get there. All right. Any questions about these 3 roads before we delve into a little bit more? Yes, sir.
What do you do if there's no bar?
You cast short, medium, and long. If there's no sandbar, like down in Vero, there's no sandbar. The sandbar, like right there, there's nothing. It's just flat. I'll throw one really short, one medium, and one as far as I can. When I go over to Pensacola, a lot of times they don't have a true sandbar. You know, here we've got 5 feet of tide change. Over there they have 1. And a lot of times it's just white, clear sand as far as you can see. It just gets deeper and deeper. Every once in a while there'll be a bar out there, but not much. So always throw, if you have more than one rod, throw one short, throw one medium, and throw one as far as you can, see what happens. Eraser? No. So now let's talk about, Brad, do you know if you have an eraser?
I don't believe so.
All right. No big. So, where to cast the bait? Let's talk about how to read the beach and how to see a run out. And a run out is simply every wave that comes up on the beach has to go back out with the same amount of energy. Otherwise, the waves would be up over A1A. So, when that energy comes up and goes back out, it sucks all the little creatures out with it. And unfortunately, a run out is where, fortunately, people drown because they can't see it. But I'm going to show you a couple of ways to be able to see the run out to make you more successful. I just had a flashback up here at the end of Amelia Island. Had a couple of guys fishing with me, and I drove as far north up the beach as you could. When I looked, and 150 yards up there, there was the biggest run out. It looked like I-95. I was like, you guys up for a walk? We got to go. And as soon as we got there, we started nailing the fish. And thank you, sir. Let's see how that'll work. Perfect. So for every wave that comes up, a wave has to go back out. And what it does is cut a hole through the sandbar. If you're out walking at low tide, you can see them easily. You're walking along in 5 deep water, and all of a sudden it drops off to chest deep water. Well, that's where all that energy is going back out. Comes up on the beach, turns and goes back out. A lot of times you'll have a double run out. It'll be coming from both directions. The easiest time to see this, I like to scout at a low tide in the afternoon when the sun's behind me. It just lights it up like a board like this. So if you have the opportunity to scout for a really good spot to fish, go in the afternoon when the sun's behind you, polarized glasses, you can see the best spots. And sometimes you can see them 150 yards away. What you'll see is deeper, darker water with less waves. Up there at those parallel jetties, when I was looking north, it looked like a dark blue streak. It was only a one-way run out. That's those parallel jetties down there. It came this way and cut through here and it looked like a new river. And we were dropping baits right in there and had fish right off the bat. But everything breaks at the weakest link. Here's the formula to where you won't break off any Sputniks or any other sinker while you're casting. If you have 10 pounds of line per ounce of sinker, you won't snap off a sinker anymore. So, on my high performance rod, when I'm going to take that 5-ounce sinker and that little bitty bait caster and sling that thing. Now, my record when I quit competing was 638 feet. That's on that little bitty reel with that high performance rod with 14-pound monofilament. Now, you just said 10 pounds of line per ounce of sinker. How are you not snapping that 14-pound mono? It's because that little bit of blue line on there, that 65-pound Power Pro, it matches exactly to the diameter of 14-pound monofilament. So my weakest link, there is no weakest link. I have 65-pound Power Pro. There's only 20 feet of it. And this is what's called a shock leader. So when I come around with that power cast, it's not gonna break, because all the pressure is on that 20 feet of Power Pro. You can use monofilament shock leader. Matter of fact, on my spinning reels, I do use monofilament shock leader so it doesn't cut your finger. But on this, once again, 20 feet tied uni to uni, makes the tiniest little uni to uni knot, and it'll just burn right through those guides and you won't even hear it. So that's, to broad brush it, almost everything I fish with is 14-pound monofilament, except when you get into the big game stuff. Monofilament's inexpensive. It's easy to untangle. That's why I don't use braid except for 2 situations. The smaller the line, the better it'll cut through the air. That's what makes braid wonderful, because it cuts through the air. Got a little tiny diameter. So that's the size line I use. Almost everything is 14-pound mono with 65-pound braid, with the exception of a spinning reel. Braid's very hard on your finger, and I'm not throwing as hard.
What's that?
So on this 10-foot rod, got a Penn 5500 long cast. This is very important. I grew up in the 70s fishing Penn spin fishers, but they had a narrow, shallow spool. Held a lot of line, but it was horrible for surf casting. And I don't know how many years ago, Penn came out with the LC. It's a spin fisher, but it's a spin fisher LC, long cast. The spool is longer. The more line you can get off on a spinning reel before it starts rubbing on the spool, the farther it'll go. So all my spinning reels are these. You can't go wrong with the quality. They hold up very well. So if anybody's interested in getting started in a good surf fishing combo, 10 to 13 foot rod made out of carbon and graphite, very lightweight, with a long cast spool. I don't care if it's Shimano, if it's Daiwa, whoever it is, but the long cast spool makes a huge difference in how far you cast with the exact same amount of energy. I'm talking about the difference between a 70-yard cast and a 100-yard cast by simply having a longer spool with more line that'll come off the reel before it starts rubbing and slowing it down. Now, why are all the world records set with these little bait casters? There's no friction. Once you get that spool going, you actually have to slow it down. And we do that with magnetic cast control. So, but as far as you can fish your whole life and never come to the dark side. There is a big learning curve going to a bait caster. But when I fish by myself, all the spinning reels come off and the bait casters go back on. Now the rods that I helped develop, you can fish a bait caster or a spinning reel on the same rod. They're called dual run. Talk about rods for just a minute. When I first started my first surf fishing rods, the first eye is big enough. You can just throw a pool ball through it. And the second eye is just a little bit smaller, and a little bit smaller, and a little bit smaller. But high-speed technology and cameras saw that line slapping around, and that creates friction. So the first guide is very tall. It's called the stripper guide. It takes those big fluffy loops of line coming off your spinning reel and get into a straight arrow. Now there's no friction. So a high-quality surf rod today, you won't find those big eyes anymore. I've got them up and around the man cave with those big old green spinning reels and those big old Mitchell 386s and all those old things from the 70s. It's amazing the technology, how much better this carbon and graphite will cast versus the old fiberglass rods back in the day.
So I can tell you've been looking at my garage, my fishing pole. Do you use a shorter pole with a short cast, or do you just carry?
Do I carry any short poles? I only carry short poles for my guide business when I have children or small ladies, it's much easier for them to cast a 10-footer than it is a powerful 13-footer. But myself, when I started guiding, that's 17 years now, I bought 4 very high-quality 13-foot rods. And this was my thinking. I can always take a high-performance rod and cast it short, but I'm never going to take a short rod and punch it out there where I need to go. So I may take that high-performance rod, just go and make a 30-yard cast. So that was my thinking. I now go to the beach with sometimes up to 10 rods. It's more fun to catch a whiting on a small lightweight rod than it is a big 13-foot high-performance rod. Every rod's got its shortcomings and every rod's got its attributes. So, but when it comes time to fish, you can always throw a long rod short, but you're not going to throw a little 8 or 10-footer long distance. But it matters what the rod's made out of. That's the biggest thing. Carbon and graphite is just so much more powerful than fiberglass. Yes, sir.
One or two, I think on the west coast, of the people, like the fish gum guy, I think, anyway, they're touting a 15-foot rod. Have you ever, what's your thoughts on that?
There comes a certain point where a rod is just ridiculously big. I think even the world records now, they're set with that. I have 2 gentlemen here that
13, 14.
13 and 14. But it matters what it's made out of. If you take a fiberglass rod that's made out of 14, you take an ugly stick. I've had many ugly sticks in my life. There's no more of them left in the garage, with the exception of Ugly Stick just came out with a graphite series that I'm testing now. I've been lucky enough to be a field tester for Penn for 10 years now. Penn finally came out with a graphite ugly stick. The jury's out on it, but if you have a 13-foot over-the-bar rod and you have a 13-foot Walmart Shakespeare Alpha fiberglass rod, the difference is between a noodle and a weapon. An ugly stick is a noodle. There's no power. Can you take it and bend it all the way and touch the butt to the tip and not break it? Yes. But when you cast it, it does the same thing. When you take a high-performance carbon and graphite rod, that's the big difference. So the length is important, but you got to get that pendulum energy going. But what matters mostly is what it's made out of. So I brought a variety of rods. I just want to just cover that briefly. For youth, a 10-foot lightweight, little over-the-bar rod with a 5500 size pin is great. If I had to buy just one rod for everybody the rest of their life, it would be the 12-footer with the 7500 size reel. The bigger that spool, the more line's going to come off with the same amount of energy. So with this 7500 size, a tremendous amount of line is going to come off before it starts rubbing. And most people can handle a 12-foot rod as long as it's a quality carbon and graphite rod. We just came out with something this year. I call that the Mardi Gras rod. Purple and pink and purple wraps. It's a 12-foot over the bar. It just looks cool. Heavy duty. If you're going to go after big game, do not go out there with your Walmart combo and hook that 100-pound tarpon or that 100-pound black tip, and probably the fish is going to die. You need heavier duty hardware. So this is our 12-foot. I named it the biggin. If it's not a 10-pound redfish, it's not even going to bend this rod. But like some of my customers that I've tutored, have caught 100-pound tarpon right off your beach here. This, you can put the screws to it and land that fish quickly and get a good release. Now on here is 400 yards of 50-pound braid. There's no playing. It's time to battle that fish have a blast, get that fish in a quick amount of time and get a good release. Whether you're catching black tips or huge redfish, right up there at the fort, you can throw into 50 feet of water and catch huge redfish. I'm gonna get them in as quick as I can, I'm gonna vent them, and I'm gonna get them back safely. But don't try to catch one on a Zebco 33. You know, it's just not gonna work for you. So, heavy duty rod and reel, line capacity with heavy line. Now you don't need 400 yards of 50 to stop most fish, but I'm telling you, in all these years, I've probably been spooled 20 times with 400 yards of 50-pound braid. There's some huge fish that come right up to the edge of our beaches. Including a great white that I got to see breach 400 yards out in the ocean. And I hooked that fish in this deep of water at the mouth of the Kansas River. So when I take them fishing, I ask them if they want to catch a shark. Be careful what you ask for. Last year we had to break one off. Fish picked it up. He was out there 400 yards. I'm out of line. The customer's arms are shaking. And he's got no gas left. And I looked at him. I said, "You got two choices. If you get this fish in, it's going to be at least another hour. But the fish probably will die. And I can try to break him off if you want to." He goes, "Please break this fish off." I use an Eagle Claw 2022 10-aught circle hook. I locked my hands down so I wouldn't break the reel off, and I started backing up. That 10-aught circle hook straightened completely out. I don't know what it was. Felt like a Russian submarine. I don't know what it was, but I know it was swimming in that trough, 30 minutes earlier. So if you're going to go after big game, be prepared.
Could you talk about the difference between bait casters and spin?
The question is the difference between bait casters and spinning reels. The biggest difference is bait casters will cast farther. Do you have to have that in your arsenal? Do you have to go to the dark side? No. But if you ever do, you'll enjoy it. You'll enjoy the challenge of not backlashing. But I fished for 25 years before I ever touched a bait caster. So you don't have to have bait casters, but they just outperform. But the learning curve is extremely steep, and I was lucky enough to be taught by Lyndon and by Richard and several others, including 2 world record holders. At the St. Augustine Beach Pier, I was just the winding guy. He had 2 rods. He was teaching a crowd like this, but it was just about casting. Pardon me. And he would cast and hand me the rod, and I would wind, and he would take the second rod and he would cast and talk. And right off the bat he said, "My next cast is only as good as you wind. Do not embarrass me." So for an hour I did this like a machine. No backlashes, no bird's nest, no nothing. But you got to get it flat and you got to get it tight. Most people make the mistake on bait casters. They get excited at the end and they're reeling and they don't realize it's balled up on one side. Or if you're sliding the fish up on the beach, tight line, loose line, tight line, loose line, tight line, loose line. Your next cast, just start cutting. So that's the biggest difference between bait casters and spinning reels. You can fish your whole life and never touch a bait caster. Here's one of those advanced things. It's so simple, but it hit me one day that you have a choice on your sand spikes whether you use one that's $5.99 and a piece of PVC and a little piece of pipe. By the way, friends don't let friends fish with cheap sand spikes. They will fail you. Whether you have $100 in your rod and reel or you have $500 in your rod and reel, those cheap sand spikes will fail you. They'll either yank out of the sand or they'll snap where they put those little tiny bolts in that PVC. All right, enough about quality sand spikes. When you have a choice when you go to the beach, you can put your sand spikes straight up and down. You can lean them towards the ocean, Or a few professionals, you'll see us leaning our sand spikes backwards. Multiple reasons for that. The biggest thing is tip wrap. When you go to make your next cast and it goes like 5 yards, you know, like, what happened? What happened is tip wrap. When you put if your sand spike is straight up and down and you put your rod in there, centrifugal force is still moving that Sputnik sinker around, or that pyramid sinker. And all it takes is one little tiny wrap, 10 or 12 or 13 feet up in the air, and you probably won't even see it. You reel up a little bit, it feels kind of funky. You go to cast, it's a failure because you got tip wrapped. Now let's talk about how to eliminate tip wrap. This will be real easy. Lean your sand spike forward. When you put your sand spike in the holder, your sinker's out here. It's still moving around like a tetherball, but you won't get tip wrap. Genius. The only problem that I have with leaning your sand spikes forward, number one, your sand spike can come out of the ground easier. And number two, your bite detection is diminished. You're already pointing the rod towards the fish. It's harder to see this. You know, you have a nice surf rod, you've leaned it towards that nice 1 pound whiting, picks it up, and you think you see a bite. Now, if it was straight up and down, you'd probably see the bite better. But let's talk about enhancing the bite. There's several reasons why I lean my sand spikes backwards. Number one, no tip wrap. Number two, I always know where my sinker and my hooks are. If I have a 12-foot rod, I wind it up till there's 12 feet of line out. I put it in the sand spike. The sinker swings right here by my knees. My hook is right here, and my hook is right here. I'm not reaching up into the sky, getting shrimp juice in my eyes. I'm not bending over trying to fix my sinker, hurting my old back. Everything is right there. 10-foot rod, leave 10 feet of line out. 13-foot rod, leave 13 feet of line out. It'll make your life so much simpler. You always, number one, no tip wrap. Number two, you always know where your stuff is. Number three is my favorite, which is bite detection. If your sand spike is leaned back just 15 degrees, you throw your sinker out there, the Sputnik locks into the sand, the tip of your rod looks like this. If you get a bite, you're going to see it really easily. However, what happens if that fish swims back to the west? You got your rod leaning towards the water, you know what you're going to see? You're going to see your line laying in the sand. You're like, what's going on there? I might have a bite or something. I don't know what's going on. But if you've got your sand spike leaning backwards slightly, your rod is going to be almost perfectly straight up. The tip's going to be bent. And if he picks up that bait and runs back to the west, your rod falls backwards. You can see 100 feet away, you've got a bite. That Sputnik is no longer locked into the sand. That's the three big reasons why I lean my sand spikes backwards slightly.
15
So-
degrees?
Huh?
15 degrees?
Yeah, not like that. It doesn't take much. Because that rod, the rod will be almost straight up and down, but if he comes back to the west, it does that. There's no pressure on the rod. Those poor guys that are doing this, they look over and their line's laying in the sand. That pompano bed has been on there for 5 minutes. It's probably gone. Circle hook's probably fallen out by now. Any questions about sand spikes?
Where do you buy it?
For 20-something years, I made these. I sold this part of my company off last year to a guy that makes custom surf carts. That'll be part of the email. It's called Surf Fishing Solutions. Best thing about selling this is I sold it to my competitor. He now has 4 different versions of sand spikes. They all have different attributes. Whether it's a round bar that goes into the sand or whether it's 1.5 inch architectural grade aluminum. So that's Surf Fishing Solutions. He's here in Jacksonville. Does some real high quality work. Can build you a cart of your dreams. He can also modify. He highly modifies. My previous one was a store-bought version. He highly modified. So it'll make your life easier if you modify a store-bought cart. Just the cart itself is wonderful. In 1976, I had a cheap Kmart combo, if y'all remember what Kmart was. Had a cheap Kmart combo and a bucket. That's all I had. That's how I got started. When I got my first surf cart, this is wonderful. But now let me tell you what a 66-year-old guy likes. A 66-year-old guy likes a lift. So you don't have to bend over so far just to get in your cooler. So Surf Fishing Solutions makes a lift kit that you can bolt on to your store-bought cart. How do you carry your sand spikes? He also makes a cradle that'll hold your sand spikes. It is so much easier to push 4 wheels than it is to pull 2 wheels. Some of y'all may know about L4 and L5 and your sciatic nerve. Pulling that thing up the dunes is tough. That's not tough. So everything that I've done to get to this point is to make my life better and easier.